This is a special meeting of the School Board of Kenosha Unified District Number 1. Notice of this special meeting was given to the public by forwarding a copy of the notice to all requesting radio stations in the Kenosha News. Purpose of the meeting is possible discussion action on KTEC, agenda review, and some verbal updates, views, and comments. Will we stand for the pledge? Roll call.
Mrs. Schmaling, Miss Adams, Mr. Price, Mr. Tierney,
Here.
Mrs. Landry,
Here.
Miss Stevens,
Yes.
Mrs. Motter.
Yes. Okay, next we have discussion, possible action. Dr. Weiss?
Yep. Thank you very much. Typically we don't have action items at these meetings, at these special board meetings. We do have one action item, one item that there can be potential action on tonight, and that is voting to approve the mutual termination of the charter agreement with the Kenosha School of Technology and Enhanced Curriculum, and transition that school to an instrument to a district choice school with a name change to Lakeview K-8 Academy. The current charter agreement that was approved on July 1st, 2023 does provide options for termination. Under Article 9, excuse me, there is a option for a mutual agreement between both KUSD and KTEC to terminate the agreement. At this time, Kenosha Unified School District and the current KTEC Governance Board have a tentative mutual agreement to terminate the charter contract. This changing of the status from KTEC from a district instrumentality charter to a school district of a choice would be effective for second semester, January 27th. So that's what's before the board tonight for action, discussion and action.
Thank you, Dr. Weiss. Do we have questions? We do have a resolution. Do we need to make a motion first for the resolution or after? We read the resolution and then we do the motion, right? To accept it. Got it.
Okay. I move to approve the resolution terminating the charter school contract with the Kenosha School of Technology Enhanced Curriculum effective January 24th, 2025, which provides for the following: removal of the charter status for KTEC as an instrumentality charter school and conversion of the school to a district choice school pre-K through 8. Approval to name the new choice school Lakeview K-8 through 8 Academy. The continuation of the use of the existing state numbers regarding school accountability measures and ensure all currently enrolled KTEC students who were previously accepted through the approved charter enrollment process retain their enrollment offering through the new Lakeview K through 8 Academy Choice School. Said resolution reads as follows: be it resolved that the Kenosha Unified School District Number 1 Board of Education hereby terminates the charter school contract with the Kenosha School of Technology Enhanced Curriculum Incorporated effective January 24th, 2025. Whereas pursuant to Wisconsin Statutes 118.40, the Kenosha Unified School District Board of Education, the board, entered into a charter school contract with the Kenosha School of Technology Enhanced Curriculum, also known as KTEC, for the establishment of an instrumentality charter school. Whereas board and KTEC are currently operating pursuant to a charter school contract dated July 1st, 2023, which extends for a term of 5 years through June 30th, 2028. Whereas board learned of concerns regarding the commingling of funds between KTEC and an independent charter school, KTEC High School. Whereas board and KTEC desire to mutually terminate the charter school contract, and whereas board and KTEC desire to enter into a mutual termination agreement setting forth the terms and conditions pertaining to the mutual termination. Now therefore be it resolved, the board makes the following findings and orders the following. The recitals set forth above are true and accurate and are hereby incorporated into this resolution. 2, the meeting at which this resolution is considered complies with the open meetings law under Wisconsin statutes 19.83 and 19.84. The 3, the board approves the mutual termination agreement terminating the charter school contract with K-Tech effective January 24th, 2025, a copy which is attached hereto and incorporated herein. 4, the board shall remove charter status for K-Tech as an instrumentality charter school and convert the school to a KUSD choice school pre-K through 8th grade. 5, the board approves the KUSD choice school to be named Lakeview K through 8 Academy. 6, the board shall continue to use existing state reporting numbers regarding school accountability measures. 7, the board shall ensure all currently enrolled K-Tech students who were previously accepted through the approved charter enrollment process retain their enrollment offering for the new Lakeview K through 8 Academy Choice School. The board grants district administration the authority to take all other action appropriate and necessary to effectuate the termination of the K-Tech charter school contract. Now therefore be it resolved that the board terminates the charter school contract with K-Tech effective January 2025 and grants enrollment rights to all currently enrolled K-Tech students who were previously accepted through the existing charter enrollment process for respective grade levels at the Lakeview K through 8 Academy for the remainder of the 2024-2025 school year, adopted and recorded at a duly noted meeting of the board held on January 16th, 2025.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. If there's no discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion passes. Now we're on to the regular agenda review, starting with policy 5200, school admissions and discontinuance of policy.
Yes, in the policies 5200, 5475, 5570, 6421 are all up for a second reading at the upcoming board meeting. Those policies we have not received that I'm aware of any feedback on those. So we would recommend that those would appear on the consent agenda at the upcoming board meeting. Policies 6700 and 6770 regarding extracurriculars and interscholastics activities we did receive some feedback on. There are also some legal developments with the Kentucky law, the Kentucky ruling against Title IX, and some other things we want to investigate further with legal counsel before bringing those items back for a second reading. Therefore, my recommendation is that they do not appear on the upcoming January 28th meeting until we can consult legal and get more updates.
Thank you. Early literacy remediation plan?
That is me. Mary Hoover and Shay Kirby are going to be joining me here in a moment. We are bringing forth the early literacy remediation plan. It is in compliance with Act 20. One of the requirements of that Act 20 is that we have a remediation plan and a reading policy. So the next agenda item would be the reading policy. So we have developed the early literacy remediation plan, and it outlines the assessment pieces, the early literacy assessment pieces, the diagnostic pieces, and then the caregiver parent communication of the screener and the diagnostic results. It also outlines student supports that include the development of reading plans, Tier 3 interventions, the guidebook on dyslexia, promotion policy, summer reading support, and the exit criteria. You can come this way. Is Mary? Oh, perfect. Sorry, Mary, we got here faster than I thought. So, and then there is a parent notification section on the assessment and the personal reading plan. So we have been working very hard, Mary and her team, over a year now, to make this piece whole. It is not quite whole yet because the state has not made some final decisions on things like the promotion policy or the summer reading support piece. But Mary can outline any pieces of the plan for you as you have questions.
Does anybody have any questions for Mary or Wendy? Ms. Tyndall, sorry. Sorry, no questions. Did you have anything to add, Mary? Oh, Mr. Price?
Sorry, I'm hurrying from Chicago here, so if I'm out of breath, my apologies. It's just a rumor, I guess, but in one of the WASB meetings, there was some talk about the $50 million, and I know this isn't the curriculum part, but that $50 million is still with JFC, maybe conceivably coming at some point, and what that would do in terms of, I know we're doing great anyways, but I don't know. I just thought I'd offer that.
So far, the money has been earmarked towards curriculum. And from the process that has been set forth, well, really wouldn't apply to us because we are not purchasing curriculum. It is for schools who wanted to purchase curriculum from the district or from the state approved list, and they had to do it after a certain date. They would actually apply for a grant that would get them up to 50% of the total cost. However, that would also, depending on the volume of grants, would be prorated. And they weren't looking to release the funds until 2026. So that's kind of where that's sitting.
Well, thanks for that detailed answer. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. All right.
So at this time, it's still unfunded by the state, the mandate that's coming down. Is that correct? No funding connected?
I can.
Yes, we are not receiving any funds from the state for any of the work that we're doing in relation
The
to Act
training.
20. We have professional learning requirements, we have assessment requirements, communication requirements, we have then the real work, the work in the classroom with the reading plan. So at this time, none of that is funded.
The only item that is purchased is the early literacy screener. So we do not have to pay for that. However, other assessments affiliated, like the required diagnostics, they are the responsibility of the district. The good thing is that Ames Web, which is the product that is the screener, we are also tapping into that for the diagnostics, so we are able to save some money on that end. But what Wendy is speaking to, all the other costs have really been absorbed here.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, hearing none, I think that brings us to item G, the closed school sites redevelopment agreement and relocation of Hillcrest School.
Wait, we actually
Oh,
have a
wait.
policy
Which one?
bringing forward. So that was the remediation plan, but we are bringing forward a new policy, 6311,
Thank
the
you.
reading goals and early literacy program. So another requirement of Act 20 is that we develop a reading policy. So this policy would be new to us. We took guidance from WASB on this as well. There are certain pieces that we needed to have within this policy. It really outlines a reading goal, and we already had a reading goal, so we are well within compliance there. An evaluation of our reading curriculum, and that work was done by Mary and her team. And that's one of the reasons we did not have to adopt new curriculum. Our curriculum, with some revisions, satisfied all of the requirements of the state's rubric. And the student reading readiness assessments are now in this policy, and we are using Ames Web Plus for that piece of that. And then we needed the remediation plan that you just heard about. So that's really what is covered in this policy. There's language about yearly evaluations of all of those pieces, which that happens anyways with our curriculum and assessment pieces.
Thank you. Questions? Okay. Now we move on. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mary, for running by. All right. Now we have the closed sites redevelopment.
So the KUSD has been working on an agreement with the city for use of the vacated sites through right sizing. We will have that agreement at the January 28th meeting. Just in a nutshell, what that does is it some of the sites. There's a land swap in there. I believe it's the Jefferson Annex site. It goes to the city, and the district gets the Lincoln Elementary site. As part of that, then there's an agreement for the city to take ownership of the vacant sites and then they'll redevelop them. They'll take the responsibility and pay for the cost of raising the buildings, remediating the sites, and then any profit that is received from the development of those sites will be split with the city 50-50 after the costs of the demolition and remediation occur. So that the city has already approved that agreement. We need to approve our end of it for the city. Also part of that agreement is the relocation of Hillcrest from their current site to the Wilson Elementary building. That building is in much better condition than the Hillcrest site. Controlled entrances. It's just better suited to be a school than the current site. We also believe that the land that building sits on, the Hillcrest site, would be desirable from a development standpoint, and we hope to be able to market that and sell it as well.
The one extra piece I will add, though, is the former Lincoln Elementary site, K-Tech East site. The redevelopment and the costs of that project would be bared by the district. So we are committing to that cost still.
All right. That brings us, any questions for Dr. Weiss on that?
Just a little overview of what the Lakeview K-8 Academy, the changes that are going to be made there to kind of bring that up to speed, if we could have a little information on that.
Yeah, that's what I was just referring to. So that would involve the demolition of the K-Tech East site, former K-Tech East site, also known as Lincoln Elementary School. That property would now become would be owned by KUSD. That was a land swap. So that would be our property. We're committing to the demolition of that building and then redevelopment of that site. That plan has not changed. The board will be finalizing that reconstruction plan.
So do you have estimates of what kind of cost approximately for all that work?
It is in the range of $1 million project, all said and done. But the board will be finalizing that.
And I know there's more to come on that.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Mrs. Landry?
For moving, I've talked to a few people and I've had some questions. For moving Hillcrest into the Wilson building, has there been community outreach to see how the community would feel about that move?
Last year, a group of us met with Alderman Kennedy, Alderman, what's Rocco's last name? Lamakia. And we met with the mayor at the time, Mayor Antromanian, as well as district officials to hear if there were concerns. Alderman Kennedy had concerns about students walking around that neighborhood. After contacting, I don't know if Eitan is here. I thought he might be here for summer school. After contacting Eitan, the principal at Hillcrest, there are maybe 10 students who do not have transportation. Everybody else has transportation to and from school. If they are not picked up, their caseworker or the worker through DCFS contacts the house and we send transportation to go get them. So that was the major concern that I heard from Alderman Kennedy regarding that. Alderman Lamakia stated that because right now Hillcrest is in his aldermanic district, stated that he has had 0 complaints from the neighborhood about the school. So I don't believe that my answer totally satisfied Alderman Kennedy, but his major concern was the busing, and that really was the transportation. That really is a non-issue. So,
yeah, I mean, he responded back to us that he appreciated that we looked into it and said if we assured him that the kids were bused, he would be okay with it. We assured him that the kids were bused, and he said, okay, thank you. So I haven't talked to him since then.
I haven't either.
All right. Anything else? Yes.
So I feel that his concern lies more with what the neighborhood presents to the kids, not what the kids present to the neighborhood.
Right, and that's what he stated.
Okay.
If the students though they get on the bus, they go in the building, they go out of the building, they get on the bus, there's really no interaction with the neighborhood.
Okay.
And that's,
I'm just asking
yep,
for
no, and
clarification.
that's a good question. Because I really don't, through that, since everybody's transported, except there's 10 students in an after school program that runs from like, I don't know, 2 to 4 or something like that. You were the former principal, so.
30 years ago.
Yeah,
25
right, may
years
have
ago.
changed a bit.
Yeah, there's that other program. Then there are kids that live, we're moving closer to town, so there's more kids that live in the neighborhood that would just naturally walk home, who live around that area. It's pretty far removed from where most of the kids that go to school there right now.
That's it.
Thanks.
Sorry, I just realized it was 30 years ago.
I just wanted to follow up to one more quick thing. Have we ever had like a bunch of complaints from the neighbors around there's plenty of houses in that area. I don't recall there being an issue over the years that I've been on the board.
No, I think that was the point that Alderman Lamacchia was making, that he had a great relationship with the school in the time that it was out there. Adding kids to a neighborhood is certainly presents more traffic and challenges, but it's going to be one neighborhood or another, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Okay. We good? Right. That brings us to summer school.
Thank you. So the 2025 summer school proposal is coming before you, as it does every year. There's some adjustments. I'll go through what those are, but in large part, there's a fairly big report. There's not many changes to summer school. I will explain to you what is proposed to be different this year. It's the same curricular and instructional practices that we had before. We are talking about a referendum and possibly doing some construction in terms of secure entrances at 7 of our schools. So I would just point out that right now, the schools that are listed could be tweaked a little bit if we do end up doing construction at some of those schools. We might, if we had a pack of a cluster of LO3 elementary schools, say, that are together, they might move to one of the other schools. We will have to take a look at and adjust to come up with the best plan that we can, should we, doing that level of construction includes disrupting a lot of dust and dirt and particles that are in the building, and so probably would be best to move some of those to a different school, but we have alternatives. Middle school is continuing with the same interventions and offerings. They're doing the same thing they've been doing for years. We do have a separate committee working with Mrs. Santelli is here, and we've met a few times with our middle school principals talking about what is our middle school plan and how do we take some. There's really some good ideas that are happening out there in terms of trying to build engagement, connections with kids, and to raise attendance in summer school. And so we're going to be working throughout this year to sort of find the best practices that we could use at all of our schools for next year. High school programming remains identical with no changes. It's all about credit recovery. It's very well organized. It's very well spelled out and taken advantage of by kids. It's a good program. There is the change to this year's plan is last year we made the change. We were struggling to get teachers to teach summer school. And if you remember, we raised the pay rate from $25 an hour to $33 an hour, which was based on Tarek, how do I say this? The
equivalent hourly rate of a entry-level teacher salary.
That's correct. Right, thank you. And so that went to $33 because we had a cost of living increase this year. It is in this proposal, and so we are proposing to you this time through that we go from 33 to 34. And so the design of this now is that it will be the equivalent of that starting hourly rate, so that it'll update when salaries update. So cost of living or whatever, summer school won't fall years behind as it has done in the past. What we didn't do last year was do the same thing for special ed assistants and clerks. And so that group continued on. Clerks were making $13.21 an hour, and weren't super excited that all the teachers got a raise reflective of the position that they hold during the year. Same with our special ed ESPs, who were working at $15.09 an hour over the summer. And so we're proposing this year the same adjustment for those positions. The total amount of money being requested for summer school remains the same. This will fit within the budget that we have. We have less schools. This will fit in that budget that we used last year too. But we are proposing that the summer school clerk get an equivalent pay that an ESP at that level would be starting during the year, which would change them to $17.80 an hour, and the special ed assistants would move to $20.18 an hour.
Questions? Mrs. Landry?
What do they make during the regular school year, the special education assistants?
The hourly equivalent rate of a starting special ed assistant is $20.18 per hour.
Okay.
Dr. Price?
Oh, I was just looking at the numbers, and it looks like the kind of the recreation one is growing. Are any of those kids the same kids? I mean, do some of the kids that do summer school also do that program, or is that the the recreation program that's just all the sporto?
If
stuff?
the timing works out, yes, I believe that some of them are the same.
But
I'm getting a nodding head in the back that yes, they are the same. So
oh, good. Okay. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, my kids did some of that. So yeah, right. Okay.
Other questions? Okay. Thank you, Dr. Hathcock. All right. On to
okay, next item on the agenda is the community liaison partnership. That's also mine. Am I jumping? Am I overstepping my? Yeah. So when I first came to this position, this program that's been around almost 30 years, or maybe it has been 30 years, was just automatically renewing, and we brought it back. We were struggling a couple of years ago. We brought it back, and we added more money from Fund 80. This is a Fund 80 funded program that is a true community split partnership with DCFS. We pay for half the position, they pay for half the position. We have more partnership with DCFS. We have positions that are out at Hillcrest. They pay for all of those positions. But this program is different. It's Fund 80 funding. And it is, like I said, dead even split between the positions. Those positions currently exist at Bradford, Tremper, Indian Trail, and Ruther. They also existed at Bullen, Washington, and Lincoln. When we closed Lincoln, we thought about the kids going over there, and we moved that dual funded Fund 80 position to Lance to help with those kids, leaving one comprehensive school that doesn't have a position like this in it, which is DCFS contracts with community impact programs, who has social workers that fill that position. We also realized that there was a problem. Like we started talking about Mahone not having that position, and it didn't really make sense that all of the other schools have that position. And so we are asking you in this report to add that 8th position. that would put a community liaison worker at all of our comprehensive middle and high schools, and Ruther. Right now, Mahone is the only one that doesn't have it. Our other middle schools, you know, Mahone is our biggest middle school, have, you know, 10% of their kids, we did some data work in terms of 10% of their kids got discipline referrals last year. You compare that to 11 or 12% at a school that is 2/3 their size, they actually have more kids that are having trouble with behavioral type of stuff or attendance or that kind of thing that this position is focused on helping. It is also, I'll remind you, a Fund 80 position. So like a social worker or a parent that had a kid at St. Joe's or a homeschool student, or this program's open to other students that are in the community. So a worker who is located at Bullen might have, or Bradford might have a student on his caseload from Shoreland. It's all possible. That's what Fund 80 is. And so, but they're mostly Kenosha Unified kids that are involved in it. There are offices at each of the middle schools and high schools where these positions are located, and they pick up and work with 15 or so students at a time on attendance, behavior, credit attainment, any sort of struggle that they're having. And so, but we talked about after we closed schools last year that we wanted to add this position to Mahone. But we realized DCFS has a different budget calendar than we do, and it created a problem for us. And so it put us on hold waiting to find out if DCFS could fit this into their budget. They feel like they have a very tight budget, but they really like this position. And so they will be here when we go to the full board report to answer any questions that you have from their perspective, including Chris Schoen from Community Impact Programs. But it has been approved for the calendar year of 2025 from DCFS. And so now we're coming you to ask for our permission to increase the funding from Kenosha Unified out of the Fund 80 money so that we can provide the other half of that position to have it at Mahone. So this board report kind of has three asks. One, can you please extend the 2024, 23-24 school year budget to include the rest of 2024, because we're talking about starting a new contract now that is in alignment with DCFS's budget calendar. So it'll start this year and go through December of 2025. And so that's the proposal. It is to cover the time from first semester, add a full year agenda, and we'll keep bringing this back in October or November now to renew, and to add half the funding of a position to put that position at Mahone. And I will just say before I stop talking and turn it over to questions, I think this is the exact type of community partnerships that schools and communities strive for. I think we're proud of it. DCFS is proud of the work that they're doing. The partnership of helping kids right in the schools and working with the entire community is something to be lauded.
Thank you. I'm sure people have questions, but Mr. Hamden, would you explain Fund 80 and everything that it can be and what it can't be used for?
Sure. Fund 80 is referred to as the Community Services Fund, and it's available to school districts through a referenda. So at one point in time, our community passed a referenda that said they wanted to support a community services fund. Community services funds are completely separate from our general operations funds, and they are supported directly by a tax to the community. So that's why it has to be open to not just our enrolled students, any residents, any taxpayer residents in the city of Kenosha, Village Pleasant Prairie, Village Town of Summers, all of our tax base. That fund can only be used for community service types programs. It cannot be instructional in nature. It has to be has to prevent barriers, so it has to be outside of our normal regular school day typically, and it has to have all those things, has to be advertised, all those things that make it a true community type program. Once funds are within Fund 80, levied for Fund 80, they cannot go backwards either, so that there's a true meaning to that levy. It has to be used for the purpose that it was levied. So right now we have in our community services funds, we have not increased that $1.5 million tax levy since I've been CFO. So 10, 12 years, that has not increased. So we've been able to manage that fund. There were some years during COVID when we did not have programming, but we had a levy. So that created some adequate reserves in those funds. So now, to Mr. Haycock's point, we feel that these additional costs can be absorbed within the current levy. There is no request to increase that, and you can do that within the current structure that exists.
And it would not be possible to not have this position and then use the funds to patch up some other part of the budget.
Absolutely not. It cannot go backwards. It cannot go into general fund.
I thought that was just important for people to know. Other questions?
Just a quick curiosity question. I think what we're doing, I think that is definitely a good plan, and having that in school is really important to our community. Does anything ever get grandfathered out of that the fund at all?
Grandfathered out?
Yeah, like it just doesn't get used anymore, or is that just always current with everything over the years, whatever's been put in there? I'm just curious.
The levy remains. So there's actually multiple funds within the community services fund. Fund 80 is the blanket. That's in general, that's how it rolls up. But we have our senior center, rec department. We have our marching band program, some fine arts programs, some rec department programs, all those things, community services, community engagement programs that all flow through Fund 80, and the board has approved those programs. So we have policy that says the board has to approve programs, new programs that get added to Fund 80. And then in the annual meeting of electors every year, we present that to the public, remind everybody, and the board can only add programs through a vote. So they're in there until the board votes otherwise.
Other questions?
Can be removed if it's not being used. That's what, I just wanted clarification on that point. Thank you.
Okay. I think we're ready for the next one, which would be the safety update. Mr. Haycock and
Thank
others.
you. I brought some of our committee members to help present this with me. They'll be with us at the board meeting too. Okay, just an update of how things are going. And December 10th board meeting, Dr. Weiss announced that he was going to start a committee to look at school safety related issues. Since that time, we've had break, but we have been able to meet twice as a group. And we're here today to give you a little bit of update in terms of how that's going.
I'm sorry, Bill. I was trying to. We should probably introduce the. I'm sorry if you're going to do it.
I'm
sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
I apologize.
Yeah.
It's been a long day. I'm not thinking straight.
No, you're great. That's good. I will say to you that before I turn it over to my colleagues here, I will just explain to you that we went about this work looking at school safety through two different lenses: internal safety and external safety threats. And so an internal safety threat might be an example of a current student that goes to school. Their internal safety threats are posed by people that are there every day. And it just, somebody that we walk in and say good morning to every morning is a little bit different type of threat it's a little bit different challenge to respond to threats of that nature than it is people that are totally outsiders to the school, which are external threats. And so a student who had graduated previously or a community member coming in to cause a problem. I will share with you also that there is a third category in here that we felt like the initiative that we were doing or the effort that we had put in place or were thinking about putting in place helped with both. And so there is a both category because we didn't feel like it belonged in one or the other. And so we started out with a review that we're going to share with you today that my colleagues are going to share with you. I have Scott Kenow is here, who's the principal at Indian Trail. Matt Tregalis is here. He's part of the committee. He's assistant principal at Mahone. And Captain Aaron Dilhoff is on our committee. Aaron is captain with the Kenosha Police Department. And they are going to explain to you, if you look at it in your packet, the items that we currently have in place in Kenosha Unified to create a safe environment. Okay. I'll turn it over to you guys.
All right, I'll start.
Yeah.
So the items I'll talk about are items in the internal category and the both category, and are things that the police department, other law enforcement agencies collaborate with KUSD on very heavily. So I'll start. Okay, I'll start on the internal. So first and foremost, our school resource officers. So the Kenosha Police Department has 5 school resource officers. Our 5th one as of this week at Lakeview Tech. So at the high schools, Tremper, Bradford, Indian Trail, Harborside, Ruther, and Lakeview Tech. So these are full-time officers. Their offices are in the school. They work there every day and handling calls for service within the school. But I think the most important role is building relationships with school staff and students, and handling issues as best they can before they become. We like them to do things before they become law enforcement problems.
We have a contract with the police department that is basically we're paying 75% of the salary of that person because they're with us 75%. And then it's kind of a win for the police department too, because when summer comes, then they have 5 extra patrol officers or however they choose to use those people to help them with the busyness of summer.
Along with the school resource officers, we also have liaison officers. Those are current off-duty police officers and retired officers, and they work as employees of KUSD, working security at the schools, the middle schools and high schools. And again, I think the key there is just the relationship building, getting to know the kids, seeing the kids in school. Sometimes they run into while they're on duty in their regular assignments. And we have, Bill, do you have the number of those that we have off duty?
We have 30 guys or so that work more often, some more often than not. I would say the big thing about the liaison officers is they are armed in our school. They are the off-duty officers are working as security for us, unless the law says if an off-duty officer, if Aaron is off-duty and runs into someone committing a felony or creating putting someone in danger while he's at target or in a school, he would use his law enforcement training to respond to that issue. And so they're very valuable security people for us and get paid at a different level than our ESP securities.
We also allow them to carry their police radios, even though they're working an off-duty assignment for a different employer. We do allow them to use their department-issued police radios so that we have immediate communication with them in the event of an emergency like that.
Our retired officers are a little bit different because they never kick into, like, if they're in the presence of a felony, they're not active duty law enforcement, so they don't go back to that training. They stay under KUSD training, but we require them to have their HR 18 license, which allows them to be armed while they're doing security work.
The next thing on our list, the blue box entry system. So this is something we've worked on the last couple of years. So when there is an active attack at a school, time is of the essence, and law enforcement gaining access to the school as fast as possible is critical to stop this active attack. What the blue box system allows us to do, and this was developed by facilities, Steve Lockram and Pat Finnemore designed this box, but it has a swipe access. So every Kenosha police officer, Kenosha County Sheriff's Deputy, and Pleasant Prairie police officer, they have a swipe card that can access the box, and there's a blue box at all of the KUSD campuses. In that box is a set of master keys, 2 sets of master keys, a school radio that school staff are speaking on. And what's important about that, when a lockdown goes into place, the doors lock. So the master keys, it's an interior and exterior master key, and so officers have the ability to rapidly access the schools to deal with the active threat. So that's been very successful. We test those routinely. We train our new officers. It's part of our field training program. I think it's a perfect example of how closely law enforcement works with the district on safety, and so that's been very successful. Another safety measure, internal, this 3M protective film. So sometimes people think that this film, there's some people may think this film is bulletproof. So it is not a ballistic rated film. What it does, and it's on all the main entrances of the schools, and it's on all entrances at the middle schools and high schools. What this does, it wouldn't stop bullets, but what it would do, it would prevent the window from shattering and then falling out. And again, I talked earlier about the importance of time during an active attack and preventing somebody from making a hole big enough to climb through or to gain access to the school. Someone could get through this, but it would slow them down, which is what we want. We are coming very rapidly, and so anything that causes a delay for them to get into the school and start harming people is really important. So, but that's what that film is. But sometimes it's confused with it stops bullets. It does not stop bullets, but it certainly slows someone down who's trying to get into the school. Next thing I'll talk about, we could probably talk for a long time about STAC, but just give a short overview. When we talk about working together and communication and collaboration, I don't think anything exemplifies this better than STAC. So STAC is the School Threat Assessment Coalition of Kenosha, and this was started several years ago. And a part of STAC is the DA's office, all of the law enforcement agencies in the county, the social service agencies, the school districts, so not only KUSD, but all the school districts in the county. And it's grown to include numerous private schools, parochial schools that are attending the meetings. We meet every other month, and I would say we're up to 50 to 60 people at these STAC meetings. So what it was initially started as is this was dealt with threat assessments, and it uses the Comprehensive School Threat Assessment Guidelines, CSTAG for short. And this is a threat assessment tool that is scientifically based to take a look at the totality of circumstances, so all the different factors, concerning behaviors that someone might be exhibiting that by itself may not seem threatening, seem like a threat or a problem, but when you have a systematic way to review a bunch of different things, you might pick up several things, and hey, if several of these things are present, there might be a problem here. So the key to this is that it's universal and systematic, and that everybody's using the same process. So the CSTAG model is something that's used throughout the state, nationally, and so there are, I know our district, KUSD, has at least two staff members at each school that are trained in the CSTAG model. Our SROs receive the CSTAG model. We're committed to this, and the same with the other districts in the county and the other members of the STAC group. All threats that are identified at the schools, all threats are reported to the police department. So even if it, the threat assessment model is implemented and it's not deemed a substantial threat or it's substantial or it's transient, it doesn't matter. It's all communicated to the police department, and we vet it as well on our end. This model, it doesn't, it promotes the utilization of consequences to the fullest extent if necessary, but it also, if that's not there, if it doesn't meet the criteria where we might charge someone with a crime, it brings together all these services, uses community and school resources to come up with a safety plan moving forward for these students and try to deal with them before they become criminal in nature. But again, mentioned it before, the biggest thing about STAC are the relationships and the partnerships that have been formed. It's people from all over the county, all the different agencies and services that are involved in dealing with school safety and school threats are all in the same room every other month and talking and sharing information. We have federal partners, state partners, local partners, all sharing information, best practices, constantly reviewing and analyzing, are we approaching this the best way? And I think the relationships formed in STAC have helped us in numerous other ways when we talk about safety in the schools. I think that covers my part of the internal threats.
Yeah, Matt, go ahead. Yeah.
All right. Before I start, I just want to say this is all, they do more than just this, but I'm just going to go over the safety portion of what they do in their job. So Dean of Students, they oversee student-related matters beyond the academics. So student conduct and discipline. They support our at-risk students. He mentioned CSTAG. The deans are trained in the threat assessment process. So after we do our threat assessment, we meet with the threat assessment team in our building to discover if it's not a threat, transient, substantial threat, and then we turn that over from what we find over to the ESC. Counselors, they do academic and career social emotional development, the social emotional support to our students when they need it, crisis intervention, collaboration, and consultation with our students. The counselors are also in constant contact with parents on a need-to-know basis. Social workers, communication between home and school. Their primary role is to connect that. Key responsibilities of what they do safety-wise is individual and group counseling. A big component we use is restorative justice for conflict. The word that always gets thrown around is bullying, but we find some of the time that it's just pure conflict. So we do a restorative. Our social workers and counselors do that. Crisis intervention also for our social workers. They're a family liaison, acting a bridge between the school and the families. Collaborate with our school staff. So they update our teachers on their prep period on maybe something going on a need-to-know basis. And they're a community resource for the families. They always provide resources for families that are in need. Next on there was culture coaches. Tarek was talking about Fund 80. So some things they do is like different culture nights with the inclusion and fostering the environment to a diverse group of students. They put on assemblies. PVIS is still in some schools where they put on pep rallies, having that real school culture and celebrating the wins of the school year. Next on the list is
Matt. Can I jump in?
Yeah, go ahead.
Our culture coaches are largely title funded, but they also do like they'll work with newer teachers that if they're struggling with discipline, and so they're doing interventions with students in relation to behaviors. They do the culture piece that you're talking about. They do small group. They do individualized interventions with students that are struggling, and they will work as a coach if like a teacher was struggling with classroom management. They'll be around working best practices with employees. They do react some to discipline when things get busy. They're there to help with that, but they're also there to be very proactive with trying to mentor kids that are struggling to be successful.
Next was administrative review committee. So a student goes to this when they have committed an expellable offense. The purpose of administrative review is to determine if the behavior is expellable and whether to move forward with expulsion or an alternate discipline action. When a student goes up to AR, it's a group of administrators who do not know the student. They often play devil's advocate, and the intent is to ensure if it goes up to expulsion that we're following district guidelines and procedures. This AR committee protects the students' rights and the liability of the school. Next is our AODA programming. So that's if a student is caught with illegal drugs, alcohol, anything like that. We house that for the first offense in school. We have our own AODA programming. And students are placed on a abeyance, which is a type of warning letter. They have to complete the AODA programming within a certain amount of days. The perks to this is we're keeping the students in the building and they're not suspended for a long time. And they're back in the classroom, so we don't pull them out of their academics. This is done by a group of either counselors, deans, or social workers in some cases.
The AODA program is there to support kids in collaborate, or in, the kids gets a consequence, but there's also an educative piece to it of how we respond to that. These are kids that are found in possession. There's usually a different response, a more severe discipline response to kids that are delivering somebody that might be found guilty of delivering something they shouldn't be in school.
Correct. Next is the e-hall pass system. This is at some schools. What e-hall pass is when a student uses the bathroom or goes somewhere in the building, they type it on their Chromebook and a teacher agrees to it, and it's checked and it's in the system. As a school, you can set it to how many passes a kid has a day. It's usually a generic number for every kid. And then, so this helps us as deans and administrators. If there is something going on in the building, we know who's out and where they are. So it clocks that, times it. The student also has to end their pass, otherwise we get alerted. So it helps in that. We know who is in the hallway at all times, and we can also set a number. We have it at my home where we set a number of how many boys in 8th grade can be out on a pass at a certain time. So that helps a lot, which is trying to figure out who's in the hall at what times. The next one I have is Second Step, which is grant funded, elementary to middle school, I believe. This is our social emotional program that we use to help students manage their emotions, problem solve, and just build positive relationships. A lot of kids are struggling with that coming out from the COVID years, but that is also in place. I know from my time in the district, we use this during our advisory period. And it's an expectation that it's used on Fridays when it's kind of that shortened day. Also, while they're using Second Step, they do activities together just for that culture building and team building while they're at school.
Okay, just continuing on with the internal insider threats portion of this. The next item is Effective School Solutions. This is a grant that started this year. Again, this is a grant Oftentimes in our schools, we have social workers that their primary function is to work in support of students with special needs, meeting the needs of IEPs, helping with a number of maybe life problem solving activities. This grant allows us to bring additional social worker support into the schools that can work with all students. So they typically see a caseload of about 15 students. We're working to expand that. And it gives students another person in the building to come and talk to, and there's also therapeutic value there. Working with insurance companies, parents are always 100% involved in that process, so there's no surprises, and this is a very big help to our students.
Yeah, these guys they're actually licensed therapists. We
Yes.
work with this company to bring them in, and so kids can get therapy in school. And then, as part of the contract, they're there. They do professional development with our staff where needed. They help coach special ed teachers or if needed. But they also are there for like crisis moments. If one of the kids that they're working with is struggling, they're there on site to work with that person.
Yeah, so
That comes from the state mental health grant.
That's what I was just going to say. It covers
Yep.
mental health.
You guys
issues.
approved this program.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a big
that's what
program.
Yep.
It's all high schools and middle schools, like Bradford and Bullen share a therapist, Tremper and Lance, that kind of thing.
Yeah, our KOC social workers are more of an extension of special education, where this is an extension of our guidance and counseling services. The next one is our community liaison program. This has been addressed with you a few times tonight. It comes from Fund 80 that we talked about. It's at the middle schools and high school. In this portion, you'd see as an extension of community impact, where you have someone in the building allowing, really checking on kids, helping them connect with community services, making sure that things in their life are being addressed from a service perspective. They're a great part of our school. Also, we have our things that you talked about, Hillcrest tonight, some programs that exist there, alternative placement options. We have the TIME program where students may go through adjudication. Education must still continue, so we have services to help support them in positive ways. We have our Bridges program there, which is where students may get placed if something happens in our schools or in the community where they need more specialized service, specialized environment. That's all done through the process, administrative review, and a number of other functions. You have the SOAR program, which is special education. Sometimes students have special needs that require additional support to a very specific level that Hillcrest is able to provide there. So that takes place, and we also have our HERO program, which is where students may participate in eSchool a couple of times a week. They can go and get that support there, less stress of going into a very large school or their normal placement, and get that support. And all of that is about continuing their education, make sure that they stay on track to graduate, receive a diploma. Talked about building culture, SIP planning. So SIP stands for School Improvement Program. And when we talk about building culture, there's the cultural component and then the instructional component that all combines into school improvement. Obviously, we want to make sure our schools are warm and welcoming places for all students and staff, as well as community members. So there are various aspects of that plan that are put together to ensure that we are accomplishing the district goals as it relates to community engagement, as it relates to school warmth and welcoming, making sure we have programs that support student success, recognize success, and we know that when our schools are safer, everything is better. And so this really does add that warmth component to the school and really puts it under the microscope for planning purposes. The gunshot detectors you'll see on there. So these are, if you go in our buildings, you'll see the blue lights that are indication of our ALICE. A lot of times those get triggered through, you see them right above us here. But the gunshot detectors are in there to detect the decibel level that's produced by a firearm when it is discharged in an area. So these have all been tested. They're in all of our schools. They do not directly set the schools into lockdown, but they do send an email to administrators at the building level and here at the district level, as well as the emergency response team. Obviously, if a gunshot were to go off in the school, we want to get that notification as soon as possible so that help can start going. But we also have many other mechanisms that would be engaged at the time to get us into lockdown very quickly. And engage those protocols. This is also nice for our students who are hearing impaired, so that in case they might not hear something, they can see those blue lights flashing and they know what's going on there. We have panic buttons in our offices, so if something were to happen and the secretary usually is where you see these things, they can't maybe get to the phone right away. They can press the button and get things rolling in terms of our lockdown and emergency notifications. So those things can be triggered that way, and again, those are all in all of our schools. The blue lockdown lights, again, I've touched on those, indicates for hearing impaired. Anytime that Alice is activated, those blue lights are also going. And then you're very aware of our Alice protocols. Vape detectors, you're hearing obviously a lot about. The board is, has been very supportive of making sure that we're doing everything we can to, remove the negative things that students are accessing in our community, and the dependencies that they're developing with our vapes, right? Vaping, we all know how unhealthy that activity is, and unfortunately, our teenagers do access those things. So, getting vape detectors in our school to allow us to, quickly identify where it's happening. And then get students help, get them into educational programming, get parents involved, and work to remove as much of that as we possibly can, because and there's lots of things with vape that could go on and on about. Gang prevention connects back to that Fund 80. This is very similar. There's two different aspects of this. We do our community liaisons do work. They meet once a month in Kenosha, once a month in Racine. There's also a community component of this where we share the cost of this program with the Boys and Girls Club and other entities within our community. So it is a true collaborative effort. And the Kenosha Unified School District Board does approve this annually. So you'll always see that coming back up for district approval. What they do is they work with our deans, our community liaisons, our Kenosha Police Department gang unit staff and officers to identify what are trends in the community, what are some things that we should be looking for, because these things do change quite frequently as trends change, and people, gangs are not static. It's always changing. So they're always updating on what to look for, how to respond, how do we support these students, how do we get them out of bad situations and with both students and families. And then you have the WAIT program. This is an anger management you heard about, much like AODA, where a student gets engaged in something, we want to make sure we can do some remediation and support. This WAIT program is an anger management software that has been around for a little bit, but it was kind of all different, implemented differently in our schools. And what we've been able to do as a district is to really take a look at getting this all put together and consistent. So the same program is now in our schools that are using, predominantly our middle schools and high schools. And it's overseen within, I think, Ms. Tyndall's office, staff member from them. And so this, again, is prevention and remediation, or potentially even post-incident. Students can access curriculum that helps them go through life problem solving. Why are you having conflict with others? How do you avoid having conflict with others? How do you communicate better, and getting them supports? You'll hear something called Base Education. That's what this is. That's the company that provides that curriculum for us. And it's a great tool for us to use in our school. Students can do it asynchronously, meaning just individually by themselves, or it can be used as like group meetings through our counseling department, social workers, etc.
Thank you. So I'll just one more thing I'll add. We do have the panic buttons in the main office, but also all of our teachers and employees can put the building into lockdown. They all know how to do that from their phone. So any employee, if a teacher doesn't need to contact the office and say, put us into lockdown, I see a threat. Every teacher can put us into lockdown also. I'd just like to point out to you, thank you. I'm glad this is a little bit of an exhaustive list. It isn't our intent, unless you tell us differently. It isn't our intent to repeat this part of the presentation of what we are already doing at the next board meeting. We can do that if you'd like, but we thought, Dr. Weiss and I discussed it. I know it's a long list, so thank you for bearing with us. But we felt that it was something that we should share publicly and that we wanted our board to know about. This is the plan that's in place. So our team, let's try to pick it up a little bit, and we'll keep going.
Can I ask one quick question?
Yeah.
Before you go on, you said any staff member can put us into lockdown on their cell phones.
On the phone
The
in their
regular phones,
in their
okay.
in their classroom.
Okay, how about like the auditoriums and stuff? There's a spot where they know.
Yeah,
where
there's
everything is.
phones and all. And there's a phone here. Yeah, we can. Yeah, it
What if they can't get to it?
then they can't put us into lockdown.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Because a regular cell phone, you can't. You don't.
That's correct. They would have to call the office on their regular cell phone and then someone else put us into
But
lockdown.
a cell phone doesn't work in at least not in Bradford Auditorium.
What's that?
We were at Bradford and trying to see if the cell phones would work in there, and they don't work. The
Yeah.
only reason you could text the other night is because they turned they turned on
Oh, the Wi-Fi. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a big concern, I think, because not only for when school's in there, but there's all kinds of events there. So I'm sure there is something we can do to address that, but I am very concerned about our auditoriums being could be a major target.
If I could just add real quickly, you're exactly right. There are some dead zones in the building. However, administrators have district issued cell phones. Almost, I think everybody does, and those are authorized to be on the Wi-Fi, so they do work, and you can make calls with those. So that does help a little bit. And we also have carrier radios that we can get a hold of people that do have access to a phone that can get that going as well. But it's not as perfect as you described. Yeah.
But the administrator has to be in the building when you rent out the space.
Yeah.
And we're there for dance recitals all the time. And
Staff is allowed to get on district Wi-Fi too with their personal phones.
yeah, but what
can
I'm
be.
saying is large groups that come in there. I mean, I was just there this Christmas more than once. And
There's no question that after school events present a different type of security issue. Football games,
all of them do.
yeah,
But
basketball games, theater.
and
you're
there's
correct.
no cameras that I could identify in the auditorium either. So, and they say that cameras, from my understanding, cameras are the number one thing that can deter, or they get a better deterrent out of it. So I don't know. I'm just
think there's-
bringing it up because I'm really
I think
concerned.
there's cameras in the auditoriums, but there isn't there aren't cameras in classrooms. There aren't cameras in bathrooms, obviously. So yeah, it's you have to have a number of items in place. And one of the things we're going to talk about is speak up, speak out. I'll just jump the gun a little bit on that. So forgive me, whoever was going to talk about that, but
I just want to request if we can get some more information about that topic because I'm very concerned with that.
Okay.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
certainly.
Yeah, just to clarify, that's information about after-school activities and
Just the auditoriums,
auditoriums.
period.
Okay.
I'm really concerned about that. I mean, that could be a massive issue.
Sure.
And an ounce of prevention is,
Yep.
goes a long way.
We can look into that some more.
We can add it on the agenda for our safety committee.
Yep.
You're welcome. Okay, the next items the guys are going to cover is these are initiatives or efforts to prevent or to support threats external, and then some of them. The first couple of presenters are going to talk about items that we think help for both internal and external.
Okay, so external, we'll go through these pretty quickly. You all are very aware we have 25 schools that have secure entrances. We have 7 others that are monitored by secure entrance. We're talking about that buzzer where you have to identify yourself to go in, and then you're met right away with with supervision, whether that's the main office or security. So the 7 are all part of the referendum that's coming up to get those cleaned up. Let me know if you have any questions about that. Single point entry for visitors. Again, you need your swipe card to enter if you're staff. There are cameras on that location so that we can always see who is there. And then there's voice interaction so that we can identify who is there and their intent. And then they have to be buzzed in. We have those on all schools, including the district office. Raptor visitor management system. So anytime you're visiting the school, you have to have your ID. You have to swipe that in the system, and then you get a badge. It's connected through to the state, and we can get information if we feel that there is any negative reason why that person should be spoken to before they're allowed to conduct business in our schools. So that's been very successful in many different situations. And then obviously background checks for staff, volunteers, and chaperones. We just don't let anyone come in and work with our kids. We make sure that under specific policy, we have to have those background checks done. Otherwise, they are in 100% supervision with our students. Everyone has to get raptored through so we know if there's any negative interactions that way.
All right, I'll talk about a couple of measures that deal with both internal and external. The first one being the emergency operation protocols or procedures, the plans that the district has in place. Those can come during or initiated during a lockdown or different communications, a reunification or a mass dismissal. They were kind enough, and again, through these relationships that we've built through just working together and communicating, to allow our department and Kenosha Fire Department to be heavily involved in just reviewing and drafting these protocols and plans and provide input. So the district has in place what they're defining as zones, and this is just predetermined responsibilities for staff to handle any number of roles during one of these situations, which again could range from a active attack to a chemical spill in one of the science labs that requires a mass dismissal. So some of these zones, again, it's built-in response. So that people know their roles, know their jobs before one of these this crisis occurs, because they're very chaotic, and just people have a hard time thinking during these. So these are predetermined things for people to focus on their one job while we work on this as a team. And it's really important, the collaboration between our first responder agencies and the district, because they know what our response is going to be during one of these types of events. They know what the fire department's response is going to be, and we know how school staff is going to respond and where they're going to be. And we communicate that and trust each other to handle those predetermined responsibilities. Some other examples, our active attack protocols, we would establish what we would call a forward tactical command very early on in this process, very close to the school. We would establish this within minutes. Our initial officers would, of course, rapidly enter the school and deal with an active threat. But very early on, we want to establish command, and that's a unified command with fire, police, and the district is integrated right into that. So they're going to come to that spot. They have a backpack built out with a laptop, more master keys, access to the cameras, Infinite Campus, student rosters, so we can quickly gather information, identify who might be doing this, find them, locate them, and stop them. And so that's a good example. There's equipment, there's staff predetermined to integrate directly into all of our protocols and procedures. Digital mapping of schools. So the district has digitally mapped all of the campuses. Again, heavy input from law enforcement and the fire department, noting just certain points of interest on the maps, like fire extinguishers. These are able to to stay up to date. Obviously, there's construction and additions at the schools quite often with this many campuses, so those maps are updated routinely. We have 217 police officers at our agency, and that doesn't include the county, Pleasant Prairie, but that's a lot of campuses. Our officers aren't going to know every nook and cranny of each school. So with this digital map, we're able to pull this up on a phone, on the computer in the squad car, and have access to this, and again, find, locate a problem, assist the district in any way that we can rapidly. I love you guys protocols. So I love you guys as a foundation, started by the father of a young girl killed in Colorado during an active shooter or a hostage situation, but he recognized the need over 20 years ago for, again, a standard response in a crisis like this that's so chaotic and so dynamic. And so the district is following those protocols. They're standard response protocols, that terminology: hold, secure, lockdown, evacuate, shelter. Those are universal terms that school districts all over the place are using, again, through STAC. Those are used all across the nation. So again, just having common terminology so that people know what to expect and how to respond in these types of events. Also, they have a standard reunification method. That's the other critical component of an emergency like this, right? I have 4 kids, ages 14 to 7. I'm immediately concerned with where they're at. How am I going to see them? I want to hold my son immediately when I hear something like this is happening, know that he's okay. So having a standard reunification method, that's also a part of these zones and EOPs. People have built-in jobs, and this is done very rapidly, as well as rapidly as possible. But it's a standard process that we're using countywide, statewide, nationwide. So the district is committed to those I Love You Guys Foundation protocols. Bill talked about SUSO. SUSO is critical. Speak up, speak out. I had one today. Dealt with a anonymous tip at Bradford, and it was dealt with immediately. That can come into the police department. It can be anonymous. It's through an app. It can come to the district. But either way, whoever it comes to, another thing on this list, this communication and the shared communication that we have together. Sometimes a very sleepy Bill is calling operations in the middle of the night. We, of course, never close. And alerting us to a threat, or we're waking him up and telling him of a threat that we received. And then this CSTAG, this threat assessment process, is immediately initiated. And we often end up at a student's house that made some post on social media, and we're making contact with the parents and asking for consent to search and seeing if they have access to weapons at 3 a.m. The other big component of that with social media, a lot of students are hearing about this, and it's spreading like wildfire, right? Well, the other thing that we're doing constantly is making sure that our messaging, the police department and Tanya, the PIO, that we're doing joint messaging and shared messaging, that we're on the same page. So if we're determining that something, we handle a threat in the middle of the night, but kids still are telling parents, hey, this happened last night, and they're obviously anxious about sending their kid to school, as I am as a parent, then we're making sure there's a MARC squad at the school, just a visible presence, and that messaging is going out jointly that, hey, we've handled this, we're aware of the threat, we've determined that it's safe to do school. And that's coming from the police department and the district, again, just to lower the anxiety that obviously comes from these threats.
All right. So mine come from both external and internal. So there's camera systems in all schools. Some cameras are facing outside of the school buildings, and then we have a whole bunch inside. ESC always has access to those cameras. locked doors that are in good repair, all doors that are in good repair. If not, they're fixed immediately by facilities. They ask you not to put in a ticket for that. Mr. Fittimore asked that you call immediately to get that door fixed. He touched on this virtual anonymous threat investigation. So as an administrator, we're immediately alerted when there's a speak up, speak out. Then we contact district administrators. Some of those have trigger words, like you said. KPD is immediately contacted if there's certain trigger words for speak up, speak out. Safety.
Another thing that you guys do is at the secondary schools, we check bathrooms every hour or every half hour. We get threats written on a stall wall, something like that. We can't go about investigating that if we don't know what time of the day it was entered. And so we go into bathroom stalls every hour, look to see if there's anything written on the wall, so that if we do find somebody reports at 9:30 a.m., hey, there's a threat written on this wall, we go back and look in our documentation. We just looked at 9, it wasn't there. That narrows down a lot who we need to talk to about how that threat got on that wall. Thanks, man.
Safety and security walkthroughs. So that was on my list. Was bathroom checks. They're documented. So they're literally on the bathroom walls, and they sign it each time. Safety and security walkthroughs. So they're done every 2 years. We just had ours over at Mahone. The check, and then they give us a report on what we could do better from facilities. ESP security at the middle school and high school. What security guards do at the middle school and high school: monitor halls, lunchroom, and they're just another body that we need in the building. We are in constant communication with them. If we need somebody escorted down, he has more security obviously than we do, so they do a lot more. But that's major help in our schools. And the last one I have is our ALICE drills. They are all practiced and in place with the students. What ALICE does is it's consistent of 4 lessons that we do at the beginning of the year. Everybody does them at the same time. Once those 4 lessons are done, it's followed up with 1 drill. So we do a school drill, and then 1 immediately after learning about ALICE, and then the second one is in the month of February.
Thank you. So those are the things that we do currently. That is kind of our safety plan that we have in place now. Thank you for sitting through it. I said it before. I do think it's important for people to realize these are the things that we do. I know it's an exhaustive list, but you can never do enough or too much. There's always, what if this happened or that happened? And so we continue to work and think about what we can do to get better all the time. If you flip the page, there's another chart there, and I won't go through all of this because we're just discussing all of these items. There are items on it that are crossed off, but they weren't deleted because they might come back. There's a column over there. We don't have any current ideas going for internal to expand protections from internal threats, but we could add some. That committee is working at it, talking about it. We just put out a survey just to the people on the committee to see what are they prioritizing. There is things on here, adding the 7 controlled entrances or secure entrances. There's some talk about added funding to replace older doors that are out there. We do replace older doors every year, but we have a lot of older buildings, and so one-time chunk of money would help to replace a bunch of those at once. We could add more security film to more entrances. The Evolve system is something that we're considering. Athena system is a competitor of Evolve. You've seen those if you went to an NFL game or a casino. They're different than the metal detectors that you remember or that are at the airport. They're couple of pillars that you walk through. There's AI software that you could walk through it with your keys in your pocket and your and a Diet Coke in your hand, and it would not set it off. But if you had a weapon or a knife or a lead pipe or something, that the thickness and consistency of that metal should trigger that to go off.
Just a quick question on that. I've had this asked several times of me when I'm out in the community. What about if, because the 3D printers, people can make guns, right? They're plastic. Does that cover that type of situation?
It does not.
Okay.
Yep. No, it wouldn't cover a plastic gun made from. Right.
It's a question I'm hearing a lot about. So.
Thank you, Mr. Hathcock. When will we find out the results of the survey from?
There's still about 6 people that haven't responded yet. I was just planning to bring that back to our next committee meeting to show you where it's at.
Okay, and the committee meetings are ongoing, so we'll be.
Yep.
Okay.
We're just going to see how today went, and then schedule another meeting and keep going. And ultimately, we're see what happens with the referendum, and hopefully be able to implement some of these things.
Thank you, Mr. Tierney.
So a plastic gun probably wouldn't set it off, but a magazine with bullets to shoot out of the plastic gun would set it off. So you might get one bullet in, but you wouldn't be able to get a large amount of bullets through that machine, right?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't know. I talked to the guy. We're just kind of looking into these things. They have these in Racine Unified Schools, secondary schools, middle schools, and high schools. The guy said, for example, he goes, "I'll look you in the eye and tell you it's going to help you with vaping. But I will also look you in the eye and tell you we're not going to catch all the vapes. But as soon as you start catching a few, kids start talking and they think, I don't want to get busted with this thing. I don't want it taken away from me. And so they stop bringing them. And so I don't know how small of an item. There are settings on these machines that increase the sensitivity of it. But then you're picking up, you crank up that sensitivity really high, then you get a bunch of false alarms based on, I don't know what. We'd have to learn how to implement them. It's something that we're considering, that we looked into. It's Evolve is something we've talked about. Right now, we don't have a policy for wanding and using a metal detector to search students. Maybe that's something that Kenosha Unified wants to look into. We talked about, should we look into having SROs at our middle school? That's not totally up to us. Maybe that's not possible. Maybe we look into a security company to have an armed person if we're going to use a metal detector type system, or an Athena or Evolve type system. I don't know if they have other competitors. Do we need extra security staff? Do we need armed security? Should we modify our backpack policy? Is that something that we should be discussing differently than what we're currently doing right now? That's one of the things the committee talked about and was in our survey. Also, should we be changing our policy or our practice? Right now, all doors have to be locked, but they don't necessarily have to be closed. The theory has been have your door locked at all time, because if something happens, you can pull it closed real quick. Well, some districts require you, Florida now, after Parkland, requires that door is locked and closed when it's not being used for egress or ingress. And so unless you have a person sitting in that door or people are using that door to come in or out of it, that door should be locked and closed at all time. So those are things that our committee's looking at. We talked about panic buttons that would put the school into lockdown. That wasn't something that people like, well, it'd be great, but all of this stuff is really expensive things. And so should we have panic buttons? I don't know. It's not great that the phone may be 15 feet across the room, but we can call a lockdown already from every room in our, in our schools. So the panic alert buttons were something that was super high on people's list. Could they come back? Sure. There's some door lock monitor things that are out there. There's a couple other things. Flock cameras they would kind of look. Flock cameras are used. They would be in our parking lot to identify, here's a person that is a registered sex offender coming on your campus, but yet we already have Raptor that checks for sex offenders before they come into our building. So, you know, what can we reasonably afford that doesn't duplicate things? Do we want more safe film on our windows or entrances? That's something we could consider. There's a couple of different brands. Some of them are way more expensive than others. Some of them are thicker than others. But I think that is an exhaustive review of what our committee has been talking about, and we will move forward. We'll report back to you kind of how we're doing on this page going forward versus going back through that whole thing. If there's anybody that you want me to review that first side of that list with, to keep it public so people know, just please ask.
Thank you. Did you have something to add?
Most likely a 3D printed gun. There's a lot of metal in that gun that would be picked up by a system like Evolve.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, well, we do have to move on to thank you, and thank you to the safety committee members who are here to help out. Ongoing meetings. Next,
We have open enrollment.
open enrollment. Mr. Keckler?
Yes, thank you. This is the board's annual expectation by the January board meeting to approve just the space allocations, both by grade level and special ed grouping. It's a state requirement to allow us to participate in the state provided open enrollment transfer policy or transfer window. Pending the board's approval of this, then the window applies from the start of start of February to the last weekday in April, and then we hold the lottery and assignment in May for the board's May board decision. Even with the right sizing, you can see on the report that there's been still about 50 or so participants that are new for coming into KWSD, even though we've been consistent at nearly 200 seats overall that have been offered and provided. Even with the right sizing, we decided to increase grades 10, 11, and 12 instead of 5 allocations the past few years to 10. So that brings a total of 200 offered seats, with 18 of those as special ed ones. So again, we will continue to promote these and use it as an option for our neighboring districts and to participate in the open enrollment process.
Thank you. Questions, Mr. Keckler? Okay, hearing none.
Right, this is just, notice that at the next meeting that in closed session for letter L, that I'll present, according to my contract, I need to present my evaluation in January for the, to meet statutory requirements and timelines. So I'll be doing that in closed session at the January 28th meeting. If everything goes well, the extension of my contract will then come to the board in open session.
Fingers crossed.
Agreed.
Okay.
And then we have a resolution for Black History Month as well to round it out.
Mrs. Landry has agreed to read. And then you went over
Yep.
VA. So now that brings us to views and comments. I have something to read here, and I'm not seeing, there it is. Welcome to all who signed up to speak tonight. The board values your input and interest in KUSD. We just have 2 speakers, and I'm not seeing Gail here. One of them I'm not seeing. We have Carl. Mr. Bryan, would you speak?
Hello. All right. I'll make it quick because I know you had a long night, so in the interest of time. I just wanted to commend the board.
Is your microphone on?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
I just wanted to commend the board for its action on restructuring the K-Tech program into the Lakeview K-8. I understand there was a lot of logistical reasons for why this needed to happen, but I think that one of the things that kind of gets missed in this discussion is the opportunity that it raises. And that's the fact that there are so many kids in that neighborhood that had been affected by right sizing. Transportation had remained a concern, parent schedules had remained a concern. This creates options for them. which I think is absolutely incredible. And I'm thrilled to hear that that there is an option they can go to a school again in their neighborhood. Not only this, I mean, we're not too far removed from the ribbon cutting that was held at the Lakeview campus in the Kin neighborhood. I was very much impressed by having attended that event, of all the things and the programs and the learning that takes place in those classrooms and the opportunities they give our learners. I think creating that, expanding those possibilities in a K-8 setting, to give kids, put kids on a track towards a STEM education, I think is absolutely incredible, so that they can be prepared, for future industries and, whatever path they want to go to in life. So I think that's really incredible, and I appreciate the board for their decision in that. The only other thing that I wanted to bring up is, following off the discussion about the safety plan, I want to kind of think about that in the lens of like what's going to happen with this referendum. And I think the needs that had been identified for why, so much safety upgrades had been included in the referendum, I mean, definitely speak to the fact that there are needs out there still that need to be addressed. And I'm certainly concerned about what would happen if it didn't pass, not just because we won't get those upgrades, but, we know that everything is on the table. The board's going to have to make tough decisions. If there are less teachers, class sizes do go up. Maybe we're not doing so well with retaining our best teachers, and we're bringing people into the classroom that just simply shouldn't be there, all of which raise a safety concern in and of itself. So I am concerned about what would happen if it didn't pass, but I think, flipping the script and talking about why this is necessary for our kids and talking about the much needed safety enhancements, recruiting and retaining the best teachers, maybe even freeing up some capacity for mental health services or trauma-informed care with the staff that we have and the capacity in the district.
I'm sorry, but your time is up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. That brings us to the end of our agenda.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Yep. We do have closed session. I just have a 2-minute thing. We could even just stand up in the small boardroom to get it.
Sure. Aren't we going to have an executive session?
Right. Yep.